Welcome to the Reinvented Life with Pamela Chanel David. Do you want to step up your game? Pursue your dreams. Be the best version of yourself. The Reinvented Life is here to help. The Reinvented Life is about courage. It's about staying relevant. It takes grit. It defies gravity. It's about taking inventory of where you are today and where you want to go. Embrace change. Make things possible and reinvent your life. Call in with questions at 888-994-4995. Now, it's time to reinvent your life with Pamela Chanel.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is Pamela Chanel David with the Reinvented Life. Excited to welcome you here again this week, coming to you from California. And also my guest is from California this week. So excited about that. You know, as that intro said, elevating oneself and becoming the best version of oneself and keep that process going and going is really what today's show is all about. Excited to bring on the show a guest I have known for the majority of my entire life, certainly since a preteen. So that's more decades that I really want to choose to think about. But someone that I have been friends with, that I've admired, and excited to bring another example forward of someone that is in a perpetual state of reinvention in their life. And we're going to talk today about the media industry and about the entertainment industry. One of the biggest executives in charge, if you understand that industry, Howard Bauer. Welcome to the Reinvented Life.
Hey, Pam. How are you?
I am good. It's so excited to have you here today. And again, just show an example of constantly being in the phase of reinventing oneself. And when we think about your background, what you've done, where you've been through, in your, not just your industry and in life, I think it's a great story to start with. And I think it's a great launching point for people to realize that at any moment in their life, they can make a decision, they can make a choice, and redefine what they're doing. So welcome to the show. And I'd start out by, if you'd be so kind, is let everyone know a little bit about where you've been and maybe where you are today in terms of your career in entertainment.
Thank you, Pamela. I appreciate it. I'm at least a minimum of a 20-year veteran in Hollywood. I started in ultra low budget features and working with really just like the infancy of where the business starts is like you got to reinvent yourself on a regular basis. But in that capacity with low budget features is like you have no money, you got to figure out how to make it get a product done. And there was a whole evolution that was not only economically driven, but also, environmentally driven, where I knew there was a better course for me to be at. And so it was like starting in low budget features and having the opportunity to work on Back to the Future 3 as a PA and seeing how really these guys who were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a minute do it, which was great. Pardon me. There was a gentleman there by the name of David McGriff, who was the AD, and seeing him manage all this talent, all these people, and never lose his cool, which was a real big eye-opener for me. And then went from that to commercials, from commercials into something that is now known as reality television, because again, there was a strike. It was economically driven here in California, in Los Angeles, so they had to reinvent other ways to get programming. So I was in the forefront of doing that type of programming. And then it just sort of evolved over the years as the programming matured and I grew in the business. I had different opportunities, and in the past 10 years, I've been, managing and producing shows such as shows that you know more notably would be MasterChef, and I launched MasterChef Junior, and more currently, I did a show called Rhythm and Flow, which was on Netflix, which I'm very proud of. It was the first season of that show. That was with Cardi B, Chance the Rapper, and T.I., who are very big in the rap industry. And then we did another show called Love Island, which is a European version of the show. And we took that European version, and that took me to Fiji, and we did that show here. Did that for a couple of years. And pardon me, excuse me. And then most recently, I did a show which was an Australian version of a show that we made for American television for CBS, and which will be out hopefully in the fall. It's called The Summit. It's a great show. It's a really, really cool show. In that, broad spectrum of material, I've done so many other things along the line, but it's always been an evolution of what's next, what's on the horizon, stepping forward and stepping into things that I might not have done before, but I had the opportunity to.
Awesome. Well, with a show like MasterChef, you mentioned, or other places you've been in reality TV, I'm really curious. I think people would be really curious. What is it about those shows? Because I know we can all get where we can't wait for the next episode and we can't wait to watch them. And what is it you think that draws people to those shows?
Well, hopefully it's a good story. It's really story based, and you have good entertainment. I mean, Gordon's a exceptional host. I mean, it's hard for you to see that other than liking or not liking him. But it's having that type of person there, and also really telling good stories and keeping things relevant in the moment and moving forward, and fabricating something that's keeps you on the edge of your seat. And I mean, that people can relate to. You are relating to those people. You have rooting interest for those people, and that's why you're there.
So, as I suspected, it's the stories. I mean, it's really that story that's being told, that's being hosted, that's being carried through. And, I find in life, whether it's through my clients or organizations I've done work for, it always comes back to what is the story that people hold and people tell and that bring forward, because it is what becomes relatable to people.
Absolutely. When I got offered the opportunity of jumping on the MasterChef, it had been they finished the third season. I was going to be taking on the seasons moving forward, and so I watched before I chose to get into the programming of it and producing of the show. I watched the season 3, and I really took it to heart, because Gordon's a big personality. You don't know what he's like, and I certainly didn't know what he was like. And so it's like, okay, let me see what this is about. And it was about this woman in season 3 in particular, where she's blind and she's cooking,
Mm.
and she's, they did all the support they could to help her compete legally, but she
Sure.
was brilliant, and you're rooting for her because you want her to win. And it was great. And he was, in all honesty, he was really compassionate about the circumstances that was going on, and it was a side that you never really seen at Gordon. And that really sort of, like, I had rooting interest for her. I certainly was interested in who he was and what he was doing and how compassionate he was with her. And then I took on season 4, which was an adventure unto itself. And then we launched, on the backside of that, we launched a show called MasterChef Junior, which was right on the heels of finishing one season. We did that, and the executive producer and Gordon had really, hats off to them. They really did a good job of that. They didn't change anything. The kids stepped into the kitchen, and it wasn't reduced in any way. You had to deal with what it was. 8-10-inch knives, burners, pots, pans, everything. Now, I had safety people there to protect them, but it was, you had rooting interest for kids, and it was great. It was great to see the evolution of that, and you saw a different side of Gordon as well. That really, I think, warmed the hearts of everybody.
Well, I think that's what it is people get behind the stories, people get behind the people, they're rooting for them. I mean, what an amazing thought of them that's blind, being on this show, competing for the win, and how everyone's getting behind them. And that is really significant. It's sort of a metaphor as how are we getting behind winning in life? And I think one of the things I see today, everyone sees today, is that there's so much out there about what's not going right. There's so out there about, what could be better, instead of really capitalizing on what is going right. What is going right out there, not only entertainment, but provides a model for us to get excited and stay excited about what's going on in life, because there's a huge pendulum swing for people needing to find that happiness, that joy in life back within themselves so that they could bring it into their communities. It's
True. I
interesting
mean,
if you think about directing a show, being an executive in a show. Kind of a behind the scenes question, just out of curiosity more than anything else, is how much discussion is there about that? How much discussion is, how do we bring something forward that will help us to have people's desire behind winning?
I don't know if it's so much about behind winning. It's what's competitive, what's interesting, what's
Mhm,
going to be challenging, and what is going to, what's the viewer going to really want to watch and again root for. And
mhm,
my career has sort of like spanned different areas of competition, cooking competition. With Love Island, it's the romance of it all and what's going on, and having young 20 somethings in there, trying to relate to one another, but they're at the end of the day, they are competing for a prize. There's still 100. There's love, yes, and there's $100,000 on the line for them. So it varies. The music show, Rhythm and Flow, there's $250,000 on the line, and you get exposed to John Legend and Jesse and the other executives who are on board for that type of support. And those are the people who created that show. Who used to run the gentleman used to run NBC, so it wasn't like they were just in front of nobody. They were really in front of serious people and people who wanted to create a show that didn't deplete people of their creative freedom. And really, that's what that show is about. Is in my eyes, because many of the shows you have contracts that you have to sign that are binding, and this was not that way. So
yeah. Oh,
you know,
interesting. Yeah, that's what gets me to think about the win. It's the win in turn. How can we bring something forward that's positive, that's uplifting, that is out of the normal of this mainstream news, so that we can add this level of happiness back into life for not only the people that are, if it's a show that's a competition show, the people that are competing, but the people that are watching and the people that are involved with the production. Because I'd imagine bringing the right energy to a team that is producing is just paramount. I mean, I'm conjecture that's the truth, but
there's a
I
lot
think
to
the
it. A lot
energy.
more than what would. Yeah, no. There's a lot to it, and a lot more than what people realize. I mean, there's just a big pool of bodies doing different things, and it's a big, machine. It really is when I say big, I mean anywhere between like 250 to 400 people to 500 people. So depending on the project, and then sometimes it's less, and you manage that within. It is about who gets cast and that type of thing. So it is about personality and and drive, again, these people are putting themselves out there, so it's really it's an adventure for them as well.
Well, I'd imagine the whole project's an adventure. You and I touched on, you were recently in New Zealand for this project, and I'd imagine whether it's New Zealand or really anywhere, um, there's got to be a lot of pieces that need to come together to form this whole of getting to know where you are and getting to know how you've set it up. I think people would love to hear a little bit about what you were telling me about that, is specifically in New Zealand and setting that whole whole scene up.
Well, the the New Zealand project was a Australian show that they shot last year, and had the opportunity to jumping onto it because it was a different combination of production entities that were involved with it. But it was also then going to New Zealand, working with the Aussie who the Aussies had a specific manpower mandate of what they did and how they did it successfully, and they did a great job of it. And we were coming in to make it for the American market as well, and hopefully do the same. And we used a lot of the principle. At the end of the day, there were only 10 Americans that went over at that point, so it was a very small amount of people that went over, and majority of the team were either Kiwis or Aussies. But it was, a really great experience. They had, the expertise and knowledge of what we're doing, and what's really challenging is when you land in another country and you have all these other unique responsibilities that are there that you're not aware of, making sure everybody's permits and all these other things and how everybody works, because there's a subtlety to, not everybody works the way California works or New York, Chicago. I mean, we all have different ways of working that we're doing the same thing. So it's a subtlety of getting into that. And then this show in particular had the nuance of being like 45 minutes away from where my office was, where the main office was, up in this place called Glenorchy, and then you're going to the back hills of New Zealand, where basically they shot Lord of the Rings, and so that was a continual thing, and it wasn't like you're walking in there; everybody had to be helicoptered in, helicoptered out. So it was a very large orchestration on that side of things in particular, and it was done well, and we had elements that we were fighting on a regular basis. So it was it was a beautiful area, but at any moment in time, weather conditions could come in. And the weather conditions were enough because we were climbing to altitude, the higher we got, the more problematic it got with being able to fly helicopters in, getting our teams in time to be able to shoot what's going on. And so it was challenging, and it's sort of nonstop, and you have people working on all those mechanics of what's happening, as well as the stories that are being told and how the people are being impacted on the show. So it was, you don't stop. It's not like you go, these are not 9 to 5 jobs. These are not, what I do is not, oh yeah, I'm leaving. It's, I put in my 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours. In my case, it's usually 12 or 14 hours, and then I'm heading home. And at that point, only when we know that things are settled. So it's a consuming job. Let me put it that way.
I'm sure. I appreciate you sharing that because people really don't know. And part of what I love to bring forward is, sort of a behind the scenes of what are people's lives like? And not only how do you get where you've gotten to, but then what you're making of where you are today. Again, it's a little different than just living life. I call it that domino effect. I refer to it a lot, which is, if you think about, you line the dominoes up and you push one, and then they all tend to just fall as they may. But when you're living life more creatively, when you're living life by design and not by default, maybe a domino gets pulled out, or maybe one falls over, or maybe you stack two together and you take one out altogether. I think it's fascinating when you think about the creative process that's involved with that, and having to really, by the moment, be in a place where you're really getting to create something that's not just meaningful, but it's entertaining and it's fulfilling. So it's
Well,
exciting to
I
hear
hope
about.
I hope it's entertaining. Number one, fulfilling is a whole nother task, because we end up
Yeah.
having, there are a lot of different things. I'll give you an example of how it's as much reactionary as anything else, to be honest with you, because you're put in
Mhm.
circumstances where you have to solve problems on a regular basis. In my world, and and that's what I end up having to do. We have circumstances that are out of our control. We were in Love Island. We were shipping stuff in that were to build our city, because it's a 400 plus person team basically that's there on an island, and everything has to be imported. And the guy who was importing it told me he couldn't get it there for another 3 weeks, and he was supposed to have it there beginning of June. And it's like, well, that's not going to work. That's when we're supposed to start shooting. So on an island that has very little resources, you had to figure out how you were going to build, the city. And it was, a massive tent that housed, 100, 150 people to eat, and, and edit bays, 11 edit bays that were going on, and all this other stuff that was happening. And it was really very challenging because you had to reinvent what you thought you were going to be, that you purchased, that wasn't there anymore. And I'm working with people who've never worked with me before, don't know me from Adam. We've met maybe for a week and a half, maybe. and we all got to come together and figure out how to make this happen and pull the resources. And that's, that is a lot of what those circumstances are. I mean, they always vary, and depending on the degree of your show that you're producing and things that happen, but there are always things that occur. And that was a big one. That was huge, because that show is basically a live broadcast that happens. So if you don't have the infrastructure set up to do the show, and we have a petabyte at that point, a petabyte of memory, which is I think like 1,000 gigabytes, if I'm correct, or 1,000,000 gigabytes. Forgive me, I'm not 100% on the technology, but it's an amazing amount of technology applied. So you always have to keep up to date on the technology and what's happening, and what you don't know, you got to learn in the moment. And hopefully you've learned about it prior to leaving. And it's like one of the things that, in jumping to what we just did in New Zealand, we had the capacity to shoot everything while we're shooting it, sending up to a link, a Starlink, send it down to Australia in what is known as a VPN, a virtual private network. And then the people on stateside could watch in real time what's happening, everything that all the cameras are doing, which is really pretty cool.
It is cool. What do you like most about what you do?
Oof, that's
I
challenging.
mean, is there some favorite about what you do, or just about your career in general? What's your favorite parts of it?
It's problem solving, like what I explained just previously,
Yeah.
and learning the technology, and having that opportunity to, having the good fortune and gratitude individually of like being able to step into different environments on a regular basis. And, those shows that I mentioned to you, were, like people passed on those shows. My colleagues passed on because they didn't want to travel, they didn't want to deal with the headaches, they didn't want to challenge all this other stuff. And I stepped into it not only as a financial means, but also as a creative means, to sort of say, okay, this is really cool. These are things that, where people didn't want to take on those challenges. I stepped into it because I felt it was a creative opportunity, and for me to learn about new business, new people, a whole new line of work that I'd never done before. So I look at it as the opposite of like, oh, that's such a pain in the ass, I don't want to deal with it, as opposed to, okay, how can we make this work? What do we got to do? And granted, all these avenues have really have a lot of big personalities attached to them, behind the scenes. And I've been really fortunate to work with some really cool people who were able to, balance the creative aspects of things with the financial. That's where we butt heads on occasion. But my goal as the executive on the show is like, how do I make your vision happen, and without going over budget, and yet still working, taking a few risks financially, but still making it work, and where we come back and we haven't gone over budget and we've completed the task at hand.
So, what it sounds to me like, which excites me because that's what the Reinvented Life is all about, is embracing change. It sounds like you get excited by a changing environment, changing what you're doing, changing it up, changing up where it is, how it's done, and being able to feel confident enough to react when something doesn't show up, or an entire, you have to create a village and not everything's there, and the things aren't going to be there till you're supposed to start shooting, so these are real obstacles, real hurdles that are kind of analogous of real life for people. And the people that really embrace that, look at that, think about, okay, if I can't go over this just from the front, I'm going to have to come from the side, or I'm going to have to come from the back, or I'm going to have to really approach this in a different way, is a gigantic mirror, if you will, of a creative process in flow. And creativity is about creating, and creating is about changing and moving. It's a dynamic process. So I
It's
love
very
that. I
dynamic.
love.
It really is. The folks that I work with, particularly the executive producers, are the creative engine of it. I'm servicing that creative engine and making sure that their vision is being fulfilled. as much as I can within the numbers that we have. And a lot of it, I mean, it's a for the it's a reciprocal relationship with them, because it's like they want to have, people jump out of airplanes and parachute down and land on the ground, and we got to capture it all. And it's like, okay, I can't do that, but this is what we can do. And so you look for solutions, and it's in the business when you start off, there's this position usually is somebody who just says no. It's no, you can't, no, you can't, because you get so concerned about the dollars and where it's at and how you're making it work, because you have such a little, your bandwidth financially is really tight. And so you have to be able to think creatively, and that's not necessarily the first instinct for people, is to say no. You've got to protect everything down the road, and that's not the wrong thing to do either. But it's not what you say; it's how you say it. And you can just shut everybody down, and then you have nothing. Then that energy, that flow of creativity, sort of stops. It just you don't become you become an impediment, as opposed to a member of that creative process. And that's what I've learned over years, because I used to be that person, and it was like, okay, what am I doing wrong, and how do I change that? And you in this business, in my we are driven economically, as many businesses are. We just had a strike. The city shut down. A real recent article said we lost $6 billion in Southern California. $6 billion in 7 months. I mean, it's terrible. And so people, you have to figure out creatively how you're going to survive, what's going to happen, and when nobody's hiring you, what's going on. When I talk about gratitude, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to working with CBS again, and Endemol, who I worked with when I did, MasterChef and MasterChef Junior. So, there's an opportunity, and you got to recognize opportunity too. And a lot of us, we don't. We sort of go through it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a constant observation, even within oneself, of what are the opportunities? How can I find them, create them? And a lot of it goes back to the other point that really strikes me, is something that's so important everywhere, but in your industry, I think it's probably more important than ever, are connections with people. And the relationships that you've developed over the years have got to be sort of a lifeline for a lot of people. That it's about who you're connected with, who you've had the fortune to work with in some cases, and how you're there really for each other during times that get tough.
Well, it is about connections, but sometimes connections can't do much for you. I mean, in all honesty,
Mm,
it runs up against the wall, and you go, okay, now what? They can help you out
yeah.
to a certain extent, but they can't pull you in, and so it is being resourceful. It is, figuring it out. I have plenty of friends. One of my good friends who wrote in on the Facebook line. He's incredibly resourceful, and he always has been, and it's amazing. And I value what he's always done, because he's always had a creative solution to the financial problem. And it was really very interesting about that, and seeing him do it, because the business is not what I thought it was when I came into it. I thought, I got a job, I went basically to 9 to 5, and then that was it. And then I went back, and I just continued working, and that's so. And when I moved to town, that was not it at all. It was not it at all. It was like, oh, that job's over. I'm thinking, what's my next job? And they go, well, yeah, goodbye. You're done. You're basically fired. So it's like, I was like, oh shit, I gotta find somebody else, figure something else out. You have, you have limited resources when you start out here, so you gotta hustle. It is about a hustle. It is about being resourceful, and that's not for everybody. It isn't.
Mhm. Well, it's constantly a new game, right? It's constantly evolving. It's a new game. And have you had one highlight in your career, or one thing, whether it be in entertainment or otherwise, that you really cherish, you really hold dear, um, as
You,
a sort of a centerpiece of where you've gone?
I've been fortunate to do different things and experience
Hmm.
different things. I really have, and I acknowledge that, because it's just a fact. But it's also to my versatility of what I can and can't do, and sort of how I hustled. And like one of those things that you're talking about are, I remember in 1999, it was October 31st, 1999 at Dodger Stadium. A production company I was working with were doing a live broadcast for Kiss. The Kiss was, launching their Psycho Circus tour, and I ended up, through whatever circumstances that we had, because we had no money to do it. It was like $250,000 to do this broadcast. I was being fed back east, and truthfully, it was a very difficult broadcast. It wasn't the best show ever, but out of that show, it was like I'm dealing with Kiss and Gene Simmons and Smashing Pumpkins and all the other stuff that was going on with the concert to launch their series. But I ended up counting in the live feed to New York, standing next to the stage as launching Kiss as they're coming out. And I don't care whether you're a rock and roll fan or Kiss or whoever, but standing in front of a stage as I'm screaming into my headset to the control room, which was talking to the helicopter, which is overhead, that was feeding a fiber feed to New York with a live feed, and I'm counting it in. I'm going, who the hell am I? I'm like, and I'm counting that in, and we go live at that point. And that was exciting. And, you have different moments that just occurred, that just happened. I was working with Rod Stewart on a commercial, and he was lovely, and he was married to Rachel at the time, and they were very cool. And so you meet them, and you just have different opportunities to sort of like see different things. I would have never gone to Whitehorse, which is, if you look where Whitehorse is on the map, it's 1,500 miles north of Vancouver, British Columbia. So I'm in the Yukon. Yeah, I would have never had the chance to do that and see, beautiful terrain. Various celebrities that just happened to be. When I worked at Sony, I was an executive at Sony for a couple of years, and one of my heroes and legends that I just love this man, Mel Brooks, his office is right above mine, and so it was like I would hear him playing Billie Holiday music during the holidays, or he came walking and he says, "You're new here," and I said, "Yes, I am," and he goes, "Do you know Gideon?" And we talked, and he says, "Come on over here," and shakes my hand, talks, and his wife comes in, Anne Bancroft, and I'm looking at these for me, living legends. At that point, you have that opportunity, and those are things that are just embedded in my mind, and just really there. And there were a variety of different opportunities like that occurred. I mean, Eagles were when I was at Sony, Eagles were rehearsing, and so you went over to the big lot because I was off lot, and you hear them playing Hotel California, and everybody sort of standing outside the stage listening to them just rehearse and perform. And Jack Nicholson wanted my parking spot. What am I going to say to Jack Nicholson? No, you got to go someplace else. So, yeah, the Teamster showed up in my office, said, "Hey, Mr. Nicholson would like your parking spot. He's going to be shooting anger management, and we need it. Would you mind?" It's like, would I mind, please? Yeah. So there's right. A myriad of different events like that just happen that are really cool. And I as somebody who's a filmophile and really enjoys film, as well as doing television, I cherish that. I really do. I've met some amazing people over the years, and who have a lot of touchstones in motion picture and television. So it's been just a real adventure that way, because you just got to take it in and appreciate the moment. You forget to, so it's like being able to sort of sit there and go, "Wow, this is really cool. This is really a neat event." So, and for most people, they see it and they don't know how it's maturing. But my colleagues who do it, who do this, all the award shows and things like that, that's their life, and they deal with it. And it is a thrill when you get that. I mean, when I'm working at the back lot at Paramount, or working at the back lot at Universal or something like that. I mean, when we did one season of MasterChef, we were at Paramount, and Gordon had John Travolta's suite where his dressing room was. So it was a kick. Yeah, it was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And there are all these little type of things like that occur. So it's been fun that way.
It sounds fun. I appreciate you bringing all of these gifts forward. That gifts in the sense that you've had a chance to embrace, and you've made the opportunity for yourself to embrace it. You've not stayed in one place. You've constantly reinvented, looked at the relevancy of, what you've just done and what you can do. And as I mentioned earlier, really be excited about and get passionate about bringing forward. I love it. I appreciate our conversation, and it's something new and different for listeners and viewers to see. So appreciate your time so much.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Pamela. Really, it was great seeing you, and thanks for inquiring about it. I'm happy to talk about it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for once again tuning into the Reinvented Life Show. It's a place that we constantly, as you just saw, talk about change. We embrace it, and we talk about how can one elevate themselves, bring their best selves forward, and be excited and enjoy about life. Because being in joy, again, comes back to oneself, how much you love yourself, how much you are passionate about what you're doing. And if you're not, have the bravery and have the courage to create it. Again, Howard, it's fun to hear your bravery, hear your courage, and hear all the newness about what you've done. So we'll see everyone next week on The Reinvented Life. And if you want to contact me, I'm at info@thereinventedlife.com. info@thereinventedlife.com. My email is the easiest way to reach me if there's any questions I can answer for anyone. Have a great week, everyone.
See you later, Pamela. Bye-bye.
Take care. See you later. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to The Reinvented Life with Pamela Chanel David. Tune in each week so we can work and grow together to become the best version of ourselves. Keep striving, keep dreaming, keep working, and embrace change. You may contact Pamela Chanel at info@thereinventedlife.com.